Yeah, so I met Tarja several years ago. She reached out to me to inquire about kind of the research in different areas, clinical research. I was in admiration of what she was doing and inspired by what she was doing, the passion that she brought to her efforts and the organization. So that's what captured my attention. Of course, I'm in the field working as a clinician and researcher to have an impact on individuals suffering from substance use disorders. So there was obviously a compatibility there in terms of what we were both trying to achieve, which is ultimately to help people who have alcohol and drug problems, to help them and their families. So I was just, and it's so rare actually that to hear from somebody involved in a patient organization. So that was something that also was unique, and in the great country of Finland also. So that was also very interesting.
Okay, thank you. Very nice words. So in our guidelines we are publishing now, we are emphasizing recovery as a learning process. Obviously, there is no scientific field or any other group that could alone solve the problems related to addictions and how to treat them. Therefore, we would like to encourage open discussion between medicine, social work, education, recovery, etc. Would you like to say something about this?
Well, I think there's been, particularly in the last 20 years, in the United States, I think many other countries also have recognized the need for multidisciplinary approaches and integrated approaches. Using different disciplines, including medicine and social work and peers too. A big growth area in the United States has been the incorporation of individuals with lived experience as part of clinical teams. At Massachusetts General Hospital, for example, where I work, employ now a dozen recovery coaches. So these are people in recovery with lived experience who are part of the clinical team that play an important role in quickly building rapport and trust with patients when they come in to the inpatient units in our general hospital, Massachusetts General Hospital, so that we can engage them and then use the power of peer connection to help build a connection that then that can then facilitate other kinds of treatments and interventions. So I think it's important to recognize that there are many different facets. We've done a reasonably good job, but there's been a considerable need for improving our outcomes and linkages for patients coming into services, because we've done, we haven't really been thinking about how to radically improve outcomes in terms of sustaining remission over time. And I think that's where these other models have come in, including the use of peers who are former patients with lived experience. So those aspects, I think, have been kind of more of certainly a big growing shift with the recovery coaching movement here in the United States, which is playing a role in the clinical teams.
Right.
Yeah, I think you obviously you have to be careful when people are still in the early stages of establishing a foundation in remission and recovery, that they may not be ready to be able to play a role like a recovery coach. For example, we require 2 years of remission before people are eligible, at least 2 years of remission. So, in other words, that they have a stable foundation of recovery themselves to be able to impart that information and help others.
Yeah, exactly. Could you talk a little bit about the relation of denial and service structure, in the sense that why is it important to understand the denial mechanism in addiction while planning the services?
Yeah, well, I think, what the term denial we don't tend to use that as much, although what's captured by that, I think what we would now call, from a stages of change perspective, pre-contemplation. If you know the Prochaska and Di Clementi stages of change, We have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation or decision or determination, action and maintenance as those stages that people go through. So I think denial would be what we would now call pre-contemplation. In other words, the person meets criteria for an alcohol or drug use disorder, but they themselves don't recognize it. Other people around them often do, long before the person themselves actually recognizes it. So this is one of the reasons why in clinical settings there has been a push for screening and brief intervention earlier in the change process, and to use, patient-centered, client-centered approaches so that we can engage individuals in a conversation about their alcohol or drug use. That if we were to be more authoritative or more directive, they may shy away and tend not to disclose or want to talk about those issues. So I think, motivational interviewing, for example, grew out of the notion that people are in this, pre-contemplative or contemplative stage where they're ambivalent about change. And so it's important to be able to engage individuals earlier. Historically, we've waited until people are in the later stages of addiction before we do anything about it. So we wait till they're stage 3 or stage 4. We wouldn't do that with cancer or any other illness. Why do we do it with addiction? So the idea is to, even if they're in denial, if they meet criteria, or if they're using alcohol or other drugs in a risky or hazardous, harmful way, that we can begin to engage them in a conversation about their alcohol and drug use. And there is a particular therapeutic climate that one can create, which is an empathic, warm and empathic and engaging therapeutic climate, which makes it more likely that people would be willing to talk about those issues that they may be having. So I think historically we've thought that denial means that psychologically they're incapable of talking about it, but rather I think now the modern view is not that they're incapable, but that the conditions are not presented in a way, are not created in a way that makes it conducive for them to begin to talk about it.
Very good, thank you. That is very valuable for us. So at last, would you like to say something to encourage our work to keep going here in Finland?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think, again, communication is key. When we think about recovery, of course, from a drug or alcohol problem, one of the key factors, one of the key processes in recovery is connection, engagement and connection. And I think, in order to facilitate that as professionals, as teams that can help people suffering from these conditions, it's very important that the lines of communication are open, so that and our minds are open, so that we can continue to build on what we know and improve services for people suffering and families who are suffering. So I think that's so key, and I would encourage greater integration and cooperation and opening the doors of our minds and communication channels so that we can start to create a new paradigm that can support people and improve the health and well-being of people and families who are suffering from addiction. And I think the way to do that is through open dialogue, incorporating families and patients. A big movement we have here is having patient advisory groups, patient advisory panels on our research infrastructure, part of our research infrastructure, to be able to inform much better, make the research questions that we try to ask and answer more applicable directly to improving the health and well-being of those suffering. So all of those things I think are very important, but it starts with keeping an open mind and open dialogue and incorporating each other's perspectives so that we can start to improve on our models, which are very limited when you consider the amount of variability that we're explaining in our clinical models of care. So we need to do a lot better, and I think we need new shifts in those kinds of areas.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and let me know if I can be of help, and good luck with your with your efforts there.
Thank you.
You bet you was. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Bye.
See you, fun. Bye-bye now.
Thanks.